Welcome back to another class. We're going to get started in the standing position today. We will do our warm up, our spine stretch, and our roll down to push up standing at the start of today's class. So we're going to get our perfect alignment. So legs parallel. I call it hip width apart, but it's not the outside of your hips. It's basically where your thigh bone meets your pelvis. So legs parallel will be pretty good. Knees are soft. Think of that pelvis like a basin of water. And we're going to tip a little bit of water out of the front of the basin. We're going to come back to neutral. We're going to tuck the tailbone under as we tip water out of the back of our basin. So we're just going to move between those two extremes, between extension of your lumbar spine and flexion of your lumbar spine. And hopefully you're paying attention to what it feels like, not just internally, but also using your hand externally. So as I tip water out of the back of my bowl, tucking my tailbone under, I'm flattening this curve through my lumbar spine. And as I come back to neutral, it increases to its natural curve. And then as I tuck the tailbone out, as I increase that arch, I can feel that curve increase. So I'm going to just move between those, and as usual, if it is a bit uncomfortable going too far in one direction, don't go too far in that direction. Once you're aware of it, stop before you get to that point. We're looking for pain-free movement with all of our exercises. We're going to come into neutral. Your hip bones, your pubic bone will be in the same alignment, in this case a vertical alignment. We are going to lift up, stopping the stream, the muscles that stop the stream, the muscles that stop gas, your pelvic floor muscles, just lifting up like an elevator going from the basement just up to the lobby. We're going to tighten up our belt one notch. If you've got one hand above and below your belly button, you'll draw the hand below your belly button in towards your spine, and you're engaging these corset muscles 25-30% or so. It's not a big connection, it's quite gentle and subtle. Length through the crown of your head. Let's roll our shoulder blades. So mobilizing our scapulae and hoping to release and relax a little bit through these upper traps, the shrugging muscles, where many of us hold a lot of tension. So we're just moving. Your body and your brain love you to move. We're going to settle the shoulders down, get that little connection between your shoulder blades, your scapulae. Nice deep breaths in to the base of your rib cage. And out. So we're doing lateral thoracic breathing. We are keeping that 25 or 30% connection with your corset muscles. Reminding you, of course, your corset muscles are your pelvic floor and your transverse abdominis. One more of those deep breaths in. And on that breath out, laterally flexing, sliding the hand down the outside of your thigh. Breathe in as you come back, and then swapping sides. Being aware of differences between left and right. Tightness through what I call the elastic muscles between the hips and the ribs down the side of your waist. You're shortening down one side, lengthening on the other. The lengthening ones, the stretching ones, are actually still loaded. They're eccentrically loaded, meaning the muscles are still under load, and they're the same muscles that are drawing you back, and that will happen when we do our standing spine twist very shortly. I'm doing my rotations now, so I'm warming up my spine, all those muscles that attach to it in all three planes of movement. We started off with the side bending movement, the lateral flexion. Now we're doing rotation, working in what's called the transverse plane. And I'm getting that rotation, you can't see it, but all the way through my feet and my ankles as well. So hopefully you are as well. And now we'll work in the plane that we spend most of our life in, the sagittal plane, the forwards and backwards plane. I moved into extension, now I'm moving into flexion. My hands helping to support my upper body weight as they rest above my knees. Breathing in, arching backwards as you extend. Come back to your perfect posture, sit back and round out as you flex. One more of those, I'll do it side on for you. And scooping through those abdominal muscles, draw that belly button in stronger. We're going to do our spine our spine stretch right now. So I'm going to take my time and I'm going to slowly peel my chin down towards my chest, and I'll hold onto that soft peach under my chin as I continue peeling my spinal column off an imaginary wall behind me, rolling down. And it's up to you, as usual, how far down you roll. I'm going to roll down until after the hips have started to roll. Stop. I could hold it here for a couple of deep in and out breaths if I desired. Hands can help support my upper body weight. I'm feeling the stretch through my lumbar spine. And on my next out breath, I'm going to come back, set the pelvis, and stack one vertebra at a time as I come all the way back up to my perfect posture. I'm going to feel that length through the crown of my head the entire time, while I'm up, while I'm down, and on the way up and down as well. Feel that length through the muscles at the back of your neck. You've got 7 vertebrae there, so try to feel each of those articulating. You've got 12 through your rib cage. Just the 5, but they're quite big through the lower back. And then your pelvis will start to roll and you'll come down. Now, you've probably already noticed the areas of your spine where you might feel a bit of tightness, stiffness, soreness. You might want to stop and hold that position. And it might be through the rib cage, which is where I'm holding it now, taking a breath in. I've started to roll down through the lower back, but I'm feeling it through the rib cage. And out. And you can hold it here for a couple of deep in and out breaths. And on the next out breath, I'll sit and stack and come back up. So you can play around with this exercise. You can spend quite a bit of time doing it, but we're going to come all the way down to the floor now. We're going to do our roll down to push up, which starts exactly the same way as our standing spine stretch. Rolling down. I will adjust the camera angle once I am on the mat. At some stage, I will bend my knees and I'll bring my hands down simultaneously to the floor, then bring my knees down. I'm going to actually adjust the camera right now so you can see a little bit better how I do my push-up. So, with my push-up, my hands are wider than my mat, and I don't have the elbows coming next to my side or coming next to my vest, especially if I did have a narrow hand position like I do now. If I was to do that with my elbows coming right next to my vest, like so, that's a tricep push-up, and they're really hard to do. So feel free to do those if you want to work on the back of your arms a little bit more. But we want to engage the pectoralis major and the anterior deltoids a lot more. So, being the chest and the front shoulder muscle. So hands are wider than your shoulders, in other words, in this case, wider than my mat. And I have the elbows go out probably about 45 degrees. And I keep that alignment of my spine the entire time. So in this case, I'm just pivoting on my knees. If I had straight legs, of course, again, I'm thinking of bringing my chest to the floor, not bringing my head to the floor. Now, the reason I have the elbows going out at 45 degrees, like this, it's just a lot more comfortable for your shoulder. You get a lot of engagement of this muscle. You'll get, I think, more engagement of this muscle if you have the elbows going out at 90 degrees. Very uncomfortable for the shoulder. And many of us will not like that. So, we are now going to come all the way down to the floor. We're going to do our swan dive. And for the swan dive, we're in the prone position. And I want you to relax. I'm going to draw the hips slightly up towards my ribs. Imagine there's thumbtacks under my belly button. And for the first part of this movement, I'm just going to focus on what's happening through the neck and the rib cage and try to keep this area, the lower back, out of the equation. I'm going to breathe out. I'm going to extend through the neck. Then I'm going to slide the fingers down towards my knees as I work my way down my rib cage. I'm already starting to get the lower back. I'll take a breath in, then I'll breathe out and come back. Let myself sink into the mat again. Feel that length through the crown of your head. So ideally with the breathing pattern, I'm looking for you to be breathing out as you slowly peel one vertebra at a time through your spinal column, from the back of the eyes down to base of the rib cage, which is about the bra strap level for the girls. And you can either breathe in as you come back to the mat, or you can breathe out as you come back to the mat. Either will work, but I'd like you to be breathing out as you're peeling back. We're keeping that tension out of our lower back for as long as possible. And I'm now going to start engaging through the lower back, and I'll get into the hip extensors as well, and then I'll show you how to do the external rotation of the arms. So, taking my time, feeling that length through the crown of my head. That's the full movement. And I'll come back in the opposite direction. So, relaxing, tension not just out of here, but out of all those extensors. And I'll extend through the neck, lower back's relaxed, through the thoracic. I'll start to get into the lower back, and then I'll get into my gluteus maximus and my hamstrings, my butt muscles and the muscles at the back of my thigh. This exercise is like a sister exercise to the spine stretch that we did earlier. You're actually working the same muscle groups. The difference is with the spine stretch, the muscles were getting longer as they were working and then coming back to neutral. Here, they're getting shorter as they're working and then coming back to neutral. It's all about our alignment with gravity. So, when you have finished that, we're going to roll onto our side. You might have a little child's pose first, but I'm going to roll onto my side and we're going to do our side kick. So we've got 2 exercises on our side right now. I'm going to start with the side kick and then we've got a hip exercise. So my hips are stacked. This palm, by the way, is pointing towards the ceiling because otherwise I'll start to hold on if I'm pushing into the floor with my hand. So get my hips stacked. I'm always looking to get my alignment right first. Natural curve through my lumbar spine, length through my spine, engage my corset muscles, and we're going to be breathing into the base of the ribcage. That's your ABCs, alignment, breathing, and centering. I'm going to float both feet off the floor. Notice how I've got this hand on the floor for a little bit of extra stability. I'd rather you have that hand on the floor and keep your alignment as you float those legs off the mat than lose your alignment without using the hand. You might have used that hand a lot, but now try to switch off how much you're using it. Try to have as little weight or pressure through those fingertips as possible, and maybe then bring that hand onto the side of your thigh. The arm might be vertical at the lightning rod position, and we're going to just do the standard variation of our side kick today where we're kicking forward as we breathe out with just the top leg, breathing as we come back. While you're doing a couple of those, I'm just going to move my mat back a little bit so you'll have a slightly better view of me demonstrating this. In fact, a much better view from what I can see. Okay. So you know there's a few variations of this one, including the gluteal lifts and also the small circles that you can do. But the leg that's moving, the leg close to the ceiling, doesn't come behind the other leg. It stays nice and still. I'm forward about 10 degrees or so with my legs. They're pivoted at the hip forward, so I can look down and easily see my feet, but I don't want to see my feet. These inner thigh muscles are working because this thigh, I'm going to relax it now, it was off the floor. So that is your side kick. We're going to go into our killer rotations now. Generally, I will start in that bent-legged position and I will straighten this leg out. I'm going to do the same thing with my arm, internal rotations, straight up and down. Now my knee is soft and my foot, ankle are relaxed. You can point with your feet, your ankles and your toes as well. Once you've done, I don't know, 8 sounds like a good number. Let's externally rotate now and we'll do our heel taps. It's not important, as usual, whether or not your leg touches the floor. What is important is trying to keep that alignment through your spinal column. If I try to take that foot all the way to the floor, it takes my hips with it, which means I lengthen these muscles, shorten these ones, and I push into the floor. Sorry, just thinking. And I'm going to go toe to heel, toe to heel, toe to heel. So this is our killer rotations, excellent for your gluteal muscles. We are going to roll onto our back and we're going to do our shoulder bridge roll now. And then we've got quite a few exercises actually on our back. And so we'll start with our shoulder bridge roll. Just a reminder of shoulder bridge roll, rather than 90 degrees at the knee, we have a smaller angle. Remember, get that feeling that you're pushing the feet away from you, stretching your heels away from your buttocks. Your feet will stay still, and that will help you to initiate through your hip extensor muscles. And then we can come back. So like our swan dive, we'll just start with that smaller movement, focusing on, in this case, this part of our spine, the lower back. Now, balance between both feet. Try not, as you roll, to feel your weight shifting left to right. out as you move. Breathe in and hold. Breathing out as you move. Breathe in and hold. I find hands on my thighs help me to have that balance between left and right. Some people find hands on the floor, help them. So whatever works for you. And like our training wheels, we take them off when we don't need them. And we might then continue peeling up one vertebra at a time as we come up into our ski slope. Just a reminder, there's no extra pressure through your head or your neck. If I wanted to, I could lift my head off the mat. If I had my arms on the floor, I could do my double arm drop as I breathe in, trying to watch out for my furniture, and then breathing out as I roll back. And the arms will come back somewhat as well because you're keeping that angle between your torso and your arm the same. The arms will come the rest of the way back to the floor on the in-breath. Breathing out as you roll up to your ski slope. Breathing in as you arm drop. Breathing out as you roll back down. Breathe in as the arms come back down. So just a couple more of those. I'm just going to bring my mat a little bit closer to the camera again. And we're going to go into our up, up, down, downs next. So that's an excellent exercise for working the muscles facing the floor. All those extensor muscles that you've actually just been working quite nicely with your swan dive and your spine stretch, but also glute max, hamstrings, calves. So, up, up, down, down. Find your neutral pelvis. You know how to find that, I'm hoping, with your butterfly position. Love handles. The external obliques are relaxed as you float one leg to coffee table. Love handles will now help you as you bring the second leg up, but not doming your tummy. Breathing out as you return. Switch the love handles off. And switching the love handles back on again. Legs are moving one at a time on the out breath. Keep your alignment. You don't want your body jolting and you feeling like you're losing your alignment or your hips are tipping slightly. And just one or two more of those. And our next exercise will be, I'm definitely going to have to move the mat for this one, otherwise I'm just not going to have space. Double arm circles with single leg stretch. So, I'm going to move into the middle of my room. And so for this one, you're going to lose a little bit of me on the camera, but you'll get over it. Breathing out as I bring the legs up one at a time. I'm going to bring my arms up to sleepwalking. And as I breathe out, I'm going to circle the arms out, straighten the leg out, breathe in as I come back. I'm going to alternate legs. No loss of alignment. And you don't have to straighten the leg all the way out, as I'm doing. I have made it a little bit easier because I'm alternating legs, but I'm also doing it quite slowly. And I'm straightening the leg out all the way. And I'm straightening it out relatively lowly as well, which means it's harder. It's a little bit easier if you go a bit more vertical with the leg. Horizontal's harder. You might even stop and have a rest because it's your first set at the 100 position. We haven't done the other direction yet, but we can do that now. So I'm almost using this as a warm-up set for my global abs, being my six-pack and love handle muscles. Their correct terms, by the way, are rectus abdominis, external obliques. But they're the most superficial of your abdominal muscles. They're the ones that do a lot of movement, and they are very powerful for stabilizing you for short periods of time. Think of them as sprinters, and the deep muscles are the marathon runners. I'm going to do another set of my double arm circles, and I will continue with the large circles. I'm going to continue alternating legs, but I'll just probably end up doing a longer set this time around, and I'll change directions at probably the halfway point, probably after about half a dozen or so reps. I'm going to change directions now. Just listening to your body, and when you've had enough, you might only be halfway through your circles. You can always return one leg to the floor and just continue with your circles then if you wanted to. But give yourself a little round the clock stretch, and we are going to again go back into the 100 position, which is where we were a moment ago, the coffee table position as I like to call it. And this time we're just going to do the 100 with static legs. Now, I rarely do this one. I, more often than not, am doing something else, like holding the arms up, doing rotations or small circles, and I will show you that option. But sometimes it's just nice to go back to the basics. Now, all of these exercises can be done with just one leg at the coffee table, which is obviously less challenging strength-wise. So again, I'm just going to move a bit further away. I'm not going to worry about the mat too much for this one. So I'm going to float one leg to coffee table, two legs to coffee table, and here I'm just going to hold it here in a static position. Now I don't have to do anything with my arms, but my hands can check that I'm not doming my tummy, that I've got that natural curve through my lower back, that I'm relaxed through my arms and shoulders, etc. They can even help me cheat a little bit by helping support the weight of one of the legs. More often than not, if I was here, I would have the arms at sleepwalking, and I'd probably do maybe my rotations, just focusing on the rotator cuff muscles of my shoulder. Rotating outwards, rotating inwards. I'm not reaching up towards the ceiling. My shoulder blades are staying still, so I'm not separating them, and I'm not drawing them back in and having a really proud chest. I'm just keeping that little connection between my shoulder blades and rotating this bone inside the shoulder joint. You probably forgot that you're actually holding your legs up there, but after a while, your body will remind you, and you'll have a little rest. And we can do the static position again. And once again, I wasn't going to do it with the arms, but I just showed you with the arms. We could have one leg further away. We might have both legs a little bit further away, in this case, and a lot further away in that case. And I might hold it here for a whole set. Breathing. Do remember to keep breathing. If you are holding your breath, it's a sign you're struggling. We don't want to struggle with any of our movements. One of the Pilates principles is control, and you should have control, certainly at the lower level of the exercise. But even when you're challenging yourself, you still need to maintain control. As soon as you start losing control, you're struggling. And I don't want you struggling. So again, I'm going to do one more set of the 100. This leg a bit further away, this one a lot further away. So I've just done a mirror of what I did a moment ago. And I'm listening to my body. If I start to lose my alignment, if I start to get the shakes, if I start to feel uncomfortable through my lower back, I'm starting to struggle. I don't want to struggle, and I don't want you to struggle either. You'll probably get a little bit of the shakes at some stage with some of the exercises. A little bit's fine. It's when it starts to feel like an earthquake that you know that you've probably overdone it a bit. And I think, going to do the spinal rotation next before we rolled onto our other side, and that's in fact exactly what I'm going to do. So this is the one where you drop your knees to the left, roll your head to the right, breathe in as you slowly come back to the center, and then swapping sides. Now, as you're doing this, you should again be tuning into what your body's telling you. How do I feel across the side of my hips and through the side of my waist and lower back area? And compare it to the left. We'll compare the left to the right. Now, you'll probably feel a little bit tighter on one side because you've done killer rotations on one side. But we're going to fix that right now and do the other side. So let's spin over and do our side kick first. So once again, I'm going to move all the way back in front of my chair and my couch. And I'm actually off my mat, so it's not quite as comfortable as usual, but I'll get over it. Just trying to stay as still as you can. Again, this arm can be vertical, and you try to keep it vertical. It's there just to let you know whether or not you're dropping the shoulder backwards. If I was to drop the shoulder backwards, which I'll demonstrate right now, it would start to look like that. And it's very, very easy for me to see in my peripheral vision that that's happening. Of course, if you're in a dance studio with lots of mirrors, you'll have that feedback, that extra feedback, that visual feedback for a lot of the exercise. So just a couple more of those, and we're going to go into our killer rotations, which I'd rather do on the mat, to be honest. Just checking my notes to make sure, and then we've got a pretzel stretch coming up next. So for my killer rotations, again, getting my alignment. Of course, the muscles are working with all of our exercises unless I specify otherwise. And we're going to internally rotate both the arm and the leg. The arm is a bonus to work through the shoulder, especially the rotator cuff muscles. And as usual, if in doubt, adding the arm. If it throws out your coordination completely, forget about the arm. Just do the leg. You can always do the arm all by itself. It's just going to take you twice as long because you've got to do 2 exercises rather than 1. I'm going to go into external rotation and continue. Again, don't worry about reaching the floor. If you can without losing your alignment, fantastic. If you're not supporting your head, like I'm not supporting my head now, then you're going to have to work harder through your neck muscles, which is not a bad thing to do for a little while, but don't overdo it. Toe tap to heel tap to toe tap to heel tap. Now I'm doing this at a relatively slow speed. This is a good speed, and it's harder if you do it slower. And it's also harder if you reach a little bit higher towards the ceiling, assuming you can keep your alignment. When you've done enough of those, pretzel stretching, I've uploaded a lovely technique video on the pretzel stretches and a few other hip stretches. So feel free to go and have a look at that. It's actually the longest of all the technique videos. It goes for around 10 minutes, but it's 10 minutes of stretching. It's quite lovely. So I'm drawing this ankle in. I'm pushing that knee away. They're the muscles that predominantly work, then the gluteal muscles. And the deep lateral rotators did some work as well. So I'm going to draw this knee up towards the opposite shoulder, peeling this hip off the floor, and it's like my thigh bone is traveling up towards the keep calm and carry on sign. And I'll swap sides. This side feels tighter, but that's not surprising. I just did this side, so this is the one more likely to feel tighter, the one that you just did. Each time I breathe out, I'm just trying to sink that little bit deeper into the stretch. And again, I'm going to pull that knee across my body, going in that direction this time, and peeling the hip off the floor. And as I mentioned, there's plenty of other hip stretches. I show you several more in that video that I just mentioned in the technique. So, what have we got next? I've completely forgotten, and you'll probably want to. It's the leg pull prone, which is otherwise known in my parlance as the Sphinx. So we're going to head into that. I've actually uploaded the technique video on this just the other day as well. So you might want to head to that and have a look. And the good news is there's another one that will be going up soon with slightly more advanced variations for those who are keen on those. So I'm looking between my hands or between my wrists to keep that head and neck alignment. My gluteus maximus and my hamstrings are relaxed. So my butt muscles and the muscles at the back of my thigh. These feet are resting on the floor, but my belly button is drawn in quite strongly as if there's a steel spike underneath my tummy. I'm going to have a rest and be a squash frog for a little bit. Listen to your body and rest. You can work harder if you rest better. Of course, you can take that to extremes. If I wanted to straighten the legs, I'd curl the toes under. I would straighten one leg. Then I would straighten the second leg without locking the knees out. I could hold it here for just an in-breath. I could hold it up here for as long as I like, or as long as I'm able to. And then I'd return the knees to the floor, one at a time, before I return my hips to the floor and enjoy another child's pose stretch. You can also do this with straight arms as well, which is quite a nice variation. Do keep the elbows soft. And again, as you straighten the legs out, your hips and spine stay nice and still. You can hold it out here for as long as you like. And you can hold it out there for as little as you like. Don't creep the shoulders up towards the ears. And let's all just have a little bit of a breather. We're going to do our chest release, and we are going to do a little bonus hip exercise after that. So chest release, in this side lying position, we'll guide our head for those first couple of reps and concentrate on how our rib cage is rotating around that imaginary goalpost that touches the back of our head and our tailbone. And we're just rotating around it
with the rib cage, and as the rib cage and the shoulder come backwards and downwards, so too will the back of the head, until you're quite close to the mat. And in fact, if I was to support my head and roll all the way back, I've straightened the arm out of course, my head is only fingertip width off the floor at this point when I'm holding my stretch. To be honest, I can actually go back a lot further and rest on the couch. The couch is in my way for this exercise, but I want you to be able to see me as I demonstrate. Just watching my hand, which is one of my preferences for this. So this is chest release. So just enjoy a few of these. You've got several options, that high 90-degree arc, that more 45-degree arc. You also have the circles with or without rotations of your humerus bone, your upper arm bone. We are going to do some adductor lifts. And for this one, it's the inner thigh. Now you already worked this muscle gently and isometrically when we're holding it off the floor when we're doing our side kick earlier. We're going to work it a little bit differently now. So this leg, I mainly want to have the tension out of these muscles. So this knee is actually not touching the floor. You can't probably tell on the video, but it's not touching the floor, but it could. And if it did, I'd roll my hips forward. Not the end of the world, it's fine. But you might have a pillow resting under your knee, hips are stacked, and I'm going to lift up. And if you're watching carefully what's happening with the leg that is doing the adductor lifts, then you'll notice it's not resting on the floor. It's coming back. I actually am touching the floor with the outside of my calf muscle, but it doesn't relax to the floor. I'm also working through one of my key rotator cuff muscles as well. In fact, all four of those rotator cuff muscles are key. They're all important. You'd be surprised how you can actually get into these muscles. I'm going to demonstrate in a completely different leg position just so you can see what's happening. My hips aren't quite stacked. I'm actually rolled slightly backwards here, but that's the movement that I'm doing with this inner thigh. 5 muscles in the groin region. 2 of them are very big and powerful. And when you finish doing that, we are going to roll onto our back. We have got just knee drops, which is a really straightforward stability exercise. We've got that marble balanced on our plate on our tummy. And we're just going to drop the knee to the side without the hips rolling. Breathe in as you bring it back. This knee will now stay perfectly still and perfectly vertical as I drop the other knee out to the side, keeping my hips horizontal, level, square to the floor. I'm just rolling or rocking onto the outside of my foot. Corset muscles are engaged. And again, they don't have to work that hard. They just need to be engaged. Just have that low level connection with those muscles. Just a couple more of your knee drops, and then we're going to spin over onto the other side and finish off the class. So we've basically just got our chest release and our adductor lifts, and then we're going to have a lovely butterfly stretch through those inner thigh muscles. So I've now gone onto my other side and I'm going to do my chest release. So always looking to get my alignment first, engage my corset muscles. I'm going to be breathing into both the ribs. There's my ABCs. Another Pilates principle. We've also mentioned control today, but another Pilates principle is flowing movement. Try to make these movements smooth and flowing, not jerky and robotic. Don't make them segmented. You might be working through your spine, for instance, segmentally, but it's happening in a flowing movement. So we're always looking for fluidity. I've got the length through these fingertips. And holding the release is one of the best parts of the exercise. Gravity will allow you to sink that little bit deeper into the stretch. I've just had to change my hand position so as the chair's not in my way so I can enjoy the stretch. And you're looking for the angles that are tightest. And now we're going to go into our adductor lifts. Again, you can have pillows under your knee. Hips, generally I like them to be stacked. But if they're not, it's not the end of the world. Again, the knee could be on the floor and I could have the hips slightly rolled forward. It's not my preferred position, but it works. And you could even have the foot behind like I'm demonstrating now. And to be honest, I never do this one. But I'm showing you partly so it's easy for you to see what is actually happening. So to finish off our class today, we're going to do a butterfly stretch. And the good thing about the butterfly stretch is you're not actually doing anything. It doesn't look like or feel like you're doing anything, but we're going to be stretching out 4 of the 5 inner thigh muscles you're just working. So we're in the butterfly position, soles of the feet touching, your legs out to the side like wings of a butterfly. And one of the things I'll do is I'll check to see the height of the knees, whether they're balanced or not. And you can't tell from this video, but they are. They're exactly the same height off the floor. Right now this one's higher, and now this one's higher. But because of the angle of the video, it's about 2 foot off the floor at the moment, then you can't really tell that. But I can add the weight of my hands and just allow myself to sink that bit deeper into this groin, inner thigh stretch. So as I said, all but one of these inner thigh muscles are getting a stretch. One of them does cross the knee, and you'd have to do this with straight legs to get a stretch through that one. Now I am in neutral pelvis. In fact, this is one of the setup positions I showed you in one of the first, in fact it was the second of the technique videos. And we can do some pelvic floor work here, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So I can check on my love handle muscles, and normally I'd engage those pelvic floor muscles 25 or 30%. I'm going to engage them pretty much as hard as I can, lifting up through my pelvic floor to stop the stream, stop gas. You'll feel muscles tightening up in that groin region, but nothing's happening here. And if it's an elevator, rather than going from the basement to the lobby, now we're going all the way up to the 10th floor, and you're working really subtly through those muscles, but these aren't working. Now let's just drop it a couple of floors, maybe down to the 7th or the 8th floor, and then back up to the 10th floor, then drop it a couple of floors, then back up to the 10th floor, and just continue with that. Now you can use your hands, as I said, to check that love handles are doing nothing as you're doing all that, and then you can just once again return them as dead weights to the inside of your thigh as you do your little pelvic floor pulses. This is actually one of the fastest ways to increase the strength through these pelvic floor muscles. It is a lifting up and a squeezing is probably what you're feeling. Lift and squeeze. Lift and squeeze. This is the timing that I'm currently doing myself. And you can do this pretty much anywhere. You can do it seated at your chair, at your desk. You can do it seated in the car when you're stuck at traffic lights, and nobody else is even going to know you're doing them. To be honest, I don't think you can do too much pelvic floor work. Now these muscles have just had a bit of a stretch. If I was to try to bring my knees back together without using my hands, I have to use these muscles to bring them back. So let's do it gently. Let's not wake them up too hard. I'm going to use my hands to draw the legs back up. And that way these muscles are slowly woken up rather than jolted awake. That is the end of our class. I hope you've enjoyed it today. So once again, like a couple of our other classes, we've had the warm-up and all that set up at the start of the class. I'm hoping that you're doing that before all of the videos that we've got, all the class videos. But I just like to throw it in there occasionally to remind you. Anyway, have a great time, and I'll see you in about a week's time for our next class.